Hey everyone, it's Y again. For this video, I want to take a look at the visual issues that Halo 4 has in the Master Chief Collection. All these issues and more can be found on the Master Bug list, which I've linked in the description. You'll also find a link to the ticket submission page in the description below. With that all in mind, let's start taking a look at those visual issues. The gamma between the PC and Xbox versions doesn't match. While on the PC, the default gamma setting of 5 appears to closely match Legacy, that isn't the case on Xbox. The picture will appear overly bright and washed out if left on 5 on Xbox. I'd suggest, if playing on Xbox, consider lowering that gamma value below 5. Incorrect colors are unfortunately also an issue with Halo 4. I've covered this issue for other titles in MCC, like Halo Reach, so it isn't just a Halo 4 problem, but it is very disappointing nonetheless. It can be easily identified when the screen dips to a white color. Instead of being a bright white, like it was back on the Xbox 360, it's more of a dull white now. Just take a look at the shade of green on the green screen Forge object. It's a noticeably darker shade of green. The incorrect colors found in MCC are leaving the affected games with a duller appearance than those seen in their original release. Lighting bloom is another variable that plays a big part in a game's visual presentation. It's what gives lit objects their glow. In Halo 4, the lighting bloom doesn't scale properly, which causes issues. The higher you increase your field of view, the lower some of the bloom effects will appear. It can even get to the point where a high enough field of view can tone down certain effects to the point where they are virtually rendered non-existent. While your field of view does affect some of the bloom effects, it doesn't affect all of them. Here you can see that there isn't any difference when adjusting the field of view. What does make a difference in this case is when we adjust our resolution. Lowering it causes the bloom on the lighting on this Forerunner structure to become much more prominent. This indicates that lighting bloom isn't being properly scaled for both field of view and for resolution. As it turns out, light rays are also affected by your resolution. As you can see here, the direction of the angle of the light ray changes depending on the resolution. Various smoke effects are seemingly absent on the PC. That's not to say that there isn't smoke effects at all on the PC, though it does seem to include a considerable amount. Notably, this includes the smoke from both damaged and destroyed vehicles. It's also worth noting that this includes the smoke that comes off of Dr. Tilson when she's being composed. At the end of the level Midnight, the light emitting from Cortana's hand appears as if it has shifted from emitting from her hand to being between her hand and the camera. Another PC visual that caught my eye is that the Banshee lacks some of its reflective, glossy appearance. Again, this issue is not on Xbox and seems to only affect the PC. The next thing I want to take a look at is the various HUD issues. Here we have the campaign HUD, which, as you may have guessed, is the HUD you would see while playing the campaign. It has flavor text sprinkled throughout its design. Unfortunately, this text seems to have shifted over to the left, which misaligns it from its various design aspects. Anytime you take damage, a red triangle pattern will appear, indicating that you've taken damage and what direction it's coming from. This pattern doesn't scale with your resolution, so if you're playing at a higher resolution, those triangles will appear smaller. In certain Spartan Ops missions, your HUD doesn't become visible until a few moments after the mission starts. This behavior for those levels doesn't happen when played on an Xbox 360. If you set your reticle to lowered, it'll sit slightly higher than Legacy. In Forge, while in monitor mode, the crosshair used by the monitor is smaller. The rocket's icon, seen in the upper left-hand area of the Mantis's HUD, has shifted considerably off to the left. There seems to be an issue seen with various meters in the HUD, where in the event that they're empty, they actually still show a tiny sliver of use. This can be seen in both the Pelican and Broadsword, as well as in the Ordnance meter in the game modes that use personal ordnance. And one last HUD related issue that I'd like to draw attention to is the button icons used when using a gamepad. The icons themselves sit slightly lower, making them even more off-center than before. Their design has also been changed to be more transparent, which is less legible, making it harder to read button prompts at a quick glance. Water in Halo 4 also has some issues. The various underwater murky screen effects are completely absent from MCC. Without these effects, the view from underwater becomes crystal clear. The water's reaction to movement, such as vehicles driving over it, is much more exaggerated on MCC. This makes the water ripples go much deeper, which in some cases can reach the bottom of the ground below. There also seems to be a delay with the water ripples. If you boost a ghost in place over water for a few seconds, then drive the ghost over to a different spot in the water, the ripples will form after you've moved. There's a number of effects that don't quite match with Legacy. The various energy shield doors don't quite stand out as much as they used to. Lava seems to have completely lost its emissive visual flare. It no longer glows, which is a big visual downgrade when compared to how it looked in Legacy. The blurred background effect seen at the beginning of a multiplayer match is much less prominent. The light effects seen at the base of the Pelican's thrusters doesn't render when viewed at certain angles, making it sometimes visible, while other times that not being the case. When setting the third-person field of view to match up with Legacy, the longsword's field of view will be lower than it should. The fiery effect seen when boosting in a ghost pales in comparison to Legacy. This same visual problem is also present in the Wraith when using its boost. Now let's shift our focus over to the campaign. The cinematics suffer from an interpolation problem when cutting to a different camera, where you can see the objects on the screen get displaced for just a brief moment. This happens in a blink of an eye, making it easy to miss. Here's the same cutscene slowed down. See how after the shot changes view, Master Chief briefly bounces out and then back into view? It's a problem that affects all cutscenes and would be great to see get fixed. Throughout the campaign, Cortana becomes more rampant and her model begins to flicker more and more. This flickering effect is absent from MCC. The opening cinematic for the level Dawn has text that was originally centered in the middle of the screen. That text has shifted to the right and is no longer centered. When Cortana opens Chief's cryopod, the holographic screen she uses to open it is missing parts of its grid pattern background. Later on in the mission, Chief fires a missile at a cruiser. Before exploding, the cruiser should have a green swirling effect near where its beam would fire. During the ending cinematic for the level Requiem, a group of knights teleport into the scene. There's numerous instances where the knights appear to be less well lit than Legacy. I'm not sure what the cause of this bug is. It could be a lighting issue, or maybe just how the knights react to lighting. On Forerunner, when Chief opens up the Didax Cryptum, a white flash visual effect is supposed to play over the screen. Also, speaking of the Cryptum, in that same cutscene, you can see that the glowing energy coming off of it isn't properly animated, leaving some of the areas to sit still instead of having that flow effect. Jumping ahead to the level Reclaimer, after meeting up with the librarian, a pre-rendered cutscene begins to play. At both the beginning and end of that cutscene, the screen fades to white. In MCC, that white effect overtakes the letterbox, unlike Legacy, where the letterbox stays clearly visible. This leaves the transition between cinematics to become jarring. There seems to be a scripting bug on a level Composer that prevents the Mac cannons from firing. They line up their shot like they're about to fire, but they never end up actually shooting. And during the ending cinematic for that level, there's a group of these scientists being composed. Likely due to interpolation, the Composer effect does a sort of reverse compose on the scientist on the left-hand side. Which brings us to midnight. In the last area of the mission, there's a number of Forerunner surfaces that lack their orange color. This next one is technically present in Legacy, but is much more likely to be noticed in MCC, and that's due to the further render distance of objects. After lowering the composer's shielding, a gravity lift appears. At this point, a white cube spawns in above the level. In Legacy, the cube is far enough away that it won't be rendered unless you zoom in on it. This isn't true for MCC. You can clearly see the cube without needing to zoom in. When it comes to Spartan Ops, there's one big visual issue I noticed. On the mission Sacred, if you look up at the sky, you'll notice instantly that it's way too bright. And then finally, if we look at the multiplayer side of things, we'll see a few issues. The map complex has this ugly bug where decals will despawn when looked at from a certain angle. It happens regardless if you're playing on this map in multiplayer or in Spartan Ops. This bug happens rather frequently when playing on this map, which is a real shame. It doesn't seem to be an issue on the Xbox 360, so hopefully it'll get fixed. On Ragnarok, if you look out into the outer void of the map, you'll see a bright yellow color. This void has always been there, but it should be a grayish color. This can easily be seen when flying a Banshee. Oddly enough, the color is correct in MCC when you play on this level in Spartan Ops. Shatter has a big problem with effects not rendering. Effects like the ones seen under the piloted Ghost and Wraith are completely absent. There's also the race back fin boost as well. There's a lack of smoke for this fire. And finally, if you look up in the skybox over at this volcano, you'll notice it's lacking the bubbling effect. And that'll be a wrap for this video. I'd like to remind you all one more time to please continue to submit tickets to the Halo support site. All these issues and many more can be found on that bug list. And finally, if you enjoyed the video, consider hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.